McKay here with 3D Politics. We're going to edit all the crap out, and you're only going to see the best stuff. That's right. We've got all three Davids, the Davids that matter, the most important Davids in Oklahoma. David Van, SoonerPolitics.org, David Oldham, ConstitutionalGrounds.com, and of course, Dave D'Ambroso on Dave D'Ambroso on Facebook. I'm Tom E. McKay. You catch me right there on Twitter. We've got a lot to get to tonight. We're going to talk about American ownership rights. Amazon pays more taxes than anybody else pays. And of course, the Trump Thanksgiving tweeting while he was out there golfing, students protesting global warming and everything else. You guys excited? Did you have a good Thanksgiving, anybody?
Very good. Very good. Very good.
Is that what we agreed on?
Genocide.
We agreed on earlier before the show. If I asked you, say yes.
We talked. We spoke about this.
You guys know Brandon Dutcher. I don't know if you know him personally.
Yes,
but,
good
oh
man.
my gosh, Oklahoma Council for Public Affairs, some great stuff. OCPA. Brandon Dutcher had a great piece. American ownership rights led to the country's prosperity. Absolutely. This all has to do with the Thanksgiving break we just had, talking about why we're so thankful around here. And he's reading or writing and recounting the story of William Bradford. And here, this is Brandon Dutcher from November 23rd, OCPA. The colony's young governor, William Bradford, knew something had to be done, for in this instance, he wrote in his diary, community of property, so far as it went, was found to breed much confusion and discontent, and retard much employment, which would have been to the general benefit and comfort. For the young men who were most able and fit for service objected to being forced to spend their time and strength in working for other men's wives and children without any recompense. The strong man or the resourceful man had no more share of food, clothes, etc. than the weak man who was not able to do a quarter the other could. This was thought an injustice. That is, for doing less work, you receive the same as the man that did more work, and that seems pretty simply an injustice. And to finish up my direct reading so we can comment, so after much debate, Bradford recorded in his diary, every family was assigned a parcel of land, and each man was allowed to plant corn for his own household. I don't know if you guys have ever lived around people that had home gardens where they grow tomatoes or anything.
Victory gardens,
It's
I remember.
the bane of my youth.
So what you find
Doggone
out,
gardens.
so you know
Hated it.
what happens is, glad I brought it up.
WW2.
So what you know, what happens from the earth is that at first, once it gets going, they say, oh, take some, your neighbor that grows tomatoes. Oh, take some tomatoes because we have so many.
Yes,
and then when it gets close to the end of the season, they're like, oh my God, here's another 5 gallons of tomatoes. We got so many tomatoes.
Yes.
We can as many as we can. We've charged as many as we can. We've saved and given away as many tomatoes as we can because the prosperity. Now, this is what happened in the first, when the Europeans brought over their metal implements and their ability to mass produce as far as agriculture went. Then they met up with the Indians' ability to know the geography of the land and the fish, agriculture, and that we know the Indians helped out. It was this meeting of the advanced technology of the Europeans and the Indians who were willing to share their knowledge of the land. And that second Thanksgiving, what happened was the Pilgrims had so many vegetables and such, like the tomatoes, they set up trading posts, which leads us to the capitalists.
Tom, that's not right.
I know. I was making the whole thing up.
I went to school much more recently than you did.
That's correct.
And what happened was that the natives, they had an Atlantean civilization, equivalent to what we would say the 23rd century would be like. It was like Star Trek.
That's 4 syllables, Atlantean. You have to explain it.
And so it was a futuristic, not underwater, but connected to the Atlantic Ocean civilization. And they had no violence. They had eliminated private property because they didn't need it. Everybody owned everything.
No waste.
I wonder, how do you steal land from people that don't believe in private property? I don't understand that one, but that's
They've
just
been
a rabbit
making
trail.
rich off the poor for so long, the poor are rich again.
So there's no violence, there's no infighting or genocide or human sacrifice among the native tribes. That didn't happen. But then the Europeans came over and introduced human sacrifice.
Oh.
The
really?
legend of Quetzalcoatl that actually comes from Europe. And they introduced all of that and killed
That's
all
not
the
in this-
buffalo. That's what happens.
Literally
Sorry.
not in this
That's the
piece.
truth.
At least on the
It's fake
internet.
news.
Well, you can fact check that over at OCPA there. It's OCPAthink.org. It's a great piece by Brandon Dutcher.
Yes.
And
Also, go to Constitutional Grounds. I wrote a piece because I was looking for some pithy things to say, and I was struggling with some of the history. I didn't get in and read all of what Bradford had written, but it was interesting that there were competing stories, and the earliest published recounts of the history were done just in 1621
Yeah.
and 1622 by one of the settlers, one of the Pilgrims, and he had quite a bit to say about that time period, and so. Go over there. I've got the links. You can go to the MayflowerSociety.com and
yeah, that's
look it
over
up.
on constitutionalgrounds.com.
Shameless plug.
Shame.
It was. I think it might be on. I think I put it
I had
on
a tiny bit of
3D
shame.
Politics too. I'm just saying that's where the links are.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing though that they have left out the reality of the Bradford Diaries from the public school agenda for us.
If I could say, growing up in Minnesota, one of the congressmen from there, from western Minnesota, along the Red River of the North, is Congressman Bob Burley, back in the 70s. He's a farmer himself. And he was part of one of these efforts from détente, and, we're going to get along with the Russians. And we did this kind of cultural exchange where Bob Bergman brought some Minnesota farmers over to the Soviet Union, to Ukraine. And it didn't take them long to figure out why Russia was having to import food for their people.
I have to stop you. Are there light bulbs in your jacket?
Yes.
It's my personality. It glows.
I'm just now realizing that. Are there really light bulbs in your
Yes,
jacket?
there are. Yes, there are. I don't know if they'll show up on
Deniers.
camera,
All
but
right.
they're great.
Okay, but anyway, all he had to do, Congressman Bergman, who became our Secretary of Agriculture for Carter,
Who could forget?
but he said there was a storm coming in on the prairie, the plain of Ukraine, and every farmer who was a Soviet worker, when it was quitting time, they got off of their tractor and they just walked to their house. Didn't matter. Get fresh cut hay, and the storm's coming, it's going to ruin all of it. But it didn't matter. It wasn't his hay.
Right.
He gets to go home at 5. He goes home. Next day goes out there, the hay's roofed. Okay?
Right.
And this is it. The communists did not allow ownership. Therefore, their workers didn't have the incentive. Goes right back to Bradford. They started with communism.
Right.
Nobody had incentive. It didn't work. You got to have incentive.
Well, what happens? I mean, you see this all the time at corporations or family business, just businesses. Who has the greatest stewardship of company resources? Those with the direct stake, the owners, or the lowest person on the totem pole?
Yeah.
Right? I
Well,
mean,
the union rep on the GM board.
right, there you go. Yeah. Well, I mean, they really are the biggest stakeholder. I mean, yeah, they're holding
It's the
company
biggest
hostage.
stake holder.
I had to shut the lights off. It was distracting him. So.
The lights are not off,
They're
guys.
not off.
You just can't see them on the camera.
Oh, okay.
I can't think straight.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, one of the many failures of communism, I mean,
There
we
we go.
had to, I mean, this is part of the history that's not even told. I mean, the failures of socialism are so profound that we will never know them all. Because during the 70, 80-year failed experiment of the USSR, we fed them. The United States of America
Oh yeah.
fed the Soviets while they were pointing nuclear missiles at us.
Right.
So they didn't starve to death. That's not only the economic superiority of our system, but also the moral superiority.
Yeah.
Well, and the stupidity of if we're really at war, which was a Cold War, and we wouldn't starve them into submission to give up.
I don't know.
We just prolonged it for another.
That's a hard
30 or
one.
40
I mean,
years.
we just couldn't
Okay.
watch all those people. Because here's the thing. They were being held hostage by their government.
Mhm.
And the authoritarian states that last are the ones that are the most brutal. As soon as they start relenting, you see free market capitalism pouring in, and the free will impulses of people and self-interest move in and just erode those governments away. So I believe their government was so brutal that we essentially understood the citizens of the Soviet Union to be hostages. So I think in good conscience, we could not starve those hostages to death.
And to move on that, pivot on that moral superiority point, again, you're watching 3D politics with all three Davids and one Tom. Lately, the Handmaid's Tale has gained some fame and notoriety, suggesting that something about the conservative right would force women to have babies, when in fact it's Marxism, according to their ability, correct? That's communism, correct?
Yes.
Right.
And that would be each uterus.
Whammon.
It was actually fascism that promoted the women having babies.
The point is,
Democratic socialism.
to understand that
to say fascism is an economic.
let's not blunt the point here,
Yes.
gentlemen.
Yes, Tom.
To make the point, each uterus, according to their ability,
There you go.
each uterus, according to their ability, should provide children according to the need.
Except the Maoist communism, though, didn't do that. They limited you to one child.
Yeah, they
Understand, we're running out of kids now.
Unless you lived in rural areas, I will not have you defame the communists.
There you go.
And
If you simply analyze the words, gentlemen, men need to have sex and women have the ability to have babies. So from each, according to their ability, to each according to their need.
what are you getting here?
What I'm getting to is a Handmaid's Tale is written by Marxism. That's what I'm getting at.
Are you saying that Marxists want to seize women by the means of their production?
Yeah.
They want to grab them by the uterus.
Yes, that's exactly what he's saying.
All right.
Or from that 70 shows, as Beth says, I
Now-
have needs.
Because I recently, like once a week, I get hit by those millennials, and the millennials brought up. Somebody give me a T-shirt, and so they brought this Washington Post piece to me about Jeff Bezos and not paying taxes somehow. Amazon, they say, paid no federal taxes on $11.2 billion in profits last year. Institute for Taxation in Economic Policy, the ITEP, is a progressive think tank. Well, okay, so they say thanks to a variety of tax credits and significant tax break available on pay handed out in the form of company stock, Amazon somehow got a great tax rebate. However, Amazon pays all the taxes we are required to pay in the U.S. and every country where we operate, including paying $2.6 billion in corporation tax and reporting $3.4 billion in tax expense over the last 3 years, said an Amazon spokesperson Jody Seth. Matthew Gardner from ITEP, the progressive think tank, says it's a failure of American tax policy. Somehow he thinks that pay given out in the form of stock options is a tax loophole.
Yes, it is.
So I had to ask, as this communist said they had a problem that Amazon didn't pay these taxes. I said, do you believe the worker has a right to the fruit of his labor? And we know that the commie has to say yes. And then I said, does Jeff Bezos have the rights to the fruit of his labor? Which made a hesitation happen. And do you believe, commies out there, that the worker has the right to bargain for compensation of his choice, including like the choice to take company stock instead of monetary payment? So see, the liberal, socialist, anti-consumerists want to damn Amazon out there for doing a consensual agreement with their employees to take stock. And because the feds can't get their hands on the money, they're saying that somehow that's costing the feds. And my point about moral superiority is that indeed the worker has the rights to the fruit of his labor.
Well, you're going to be responsible for that guy's death if you
even
gave him an
Jeff
aneurysm.
Bezos.
A cognitive
You
dissonance.
Last summer I was up at the Capitol, middle of summer it was an interim study, and the Democrat House Leader, Steve Copeland, and I talked one-on-one, and I said, yeah, you'd probably do well to describe me as a Tea Party Republican. And he looked at me, he says, when the Tea Party first started, there were just as many Democrats part of it. And I said, oh, tell me more. He says, the Tea Party movement was all about bailouts for too big to fail companies,
Right.
and the mom and pops businesses got nothing. And that's what I'm saying is exactly what's going on here.
Yeah.
Amazon, GE, Goldman Sachs, they're all reaping benefits that the mom and pop shops and the family owned businesses, we don't have those.
Well, they do a good job siloing us. And who are they? They are the establishment, which is the true enemy of the American people. It's not left or right, it's the establishment of both parties.
Yeah.
We see that they oppose our president, they oppose us. And I think what they did brilliantly here, and it largely is the Democratic Party. I mean, it really is. It's probably the bulk of it. But there are plenty of rhinos giving them cover. And what they did was they saw a true bipartisan movement like the Tea Party, and they were able just to label it, well, they went through the cycle. It's almost like the cycle of guilt. They said it didn't exist at first. Then it went from not existing to they were Republican Party operatives. And then it went from that to, oh, well, it's just isolated. And then when it clearly wasn't isolated, oh, they're just a bunch of far-right nuts.
Yeah.
And that's where it ended. They just and they marketed that, and they declared it to be so, and then it was so. If you're one of these people that gets all of your information from the dead legacy media, but it really is, and they're doing it today. You know how they're doing it today? It just came to me.
Yeah.
What you're saying, they're calling the Trump movement, which is taking in a historic number of Democrats from Latinos and blacks, and even Jews are shifting. And Roman Catholics, although that's been happening over multiple administrations, not just Trump. They've been moving right, some. They're calling it populism as a dirty word. But really, it's bipartisanship. Really, it's just people clamoring for transparency and equity.
Well, it's Americanism.
Americanism.
Because we're still a constitutional republic, and there's enough people out there that what I'm seeing with Trump is not what I saw with G.W. Bush, and that was complacency. I see the desire for more transparency and more liberty now, when under Bush it was war, clamp down, police state,
Secret courts.
so right tyranny, the tyranny from the right instead of the left so much.
And Barack Obama said, I love that.
And that's not
keep in
happening
mind,
now.
Going all the way back to GW's grandfather, Prescott Bush, the Bush family has been a family of DC establishment.
Oh yeah,
in the East Coast. And that's why you don't see that ability, that willingness to take on the swamp.
right.
Because they are
They are
part of
the
that swamp, yes.
If you're just joining us, you're watching 3D Politics every Monday, 7 p.m. right here on Facebook. I've got David Van, SoonerPolitics.org, David Oldham, ConstitutionalGrounds.com, David D'Ambroso, it's Dave D'Ambroso on Facebook. I'm Tom E. McKay on Twitter. So one of the things that I've learned with arguing with the millennial, the people I call the millennial aliens, they have no idea that there's a difference between income tax and payroll tax.
Yeah.
They don't read for meaning, they read for buzzwords. And so they have no idea that the federal government taxes different types of incomes at different types of rates.
Yes.
They have no idea that Mr. Bezos doesn't own Amazon. They don't know that he doesn't, just because he's the CEO doesn't mean he doesn't, they think that he owns it. And if Amazon makes $50 billion, that Bezos made $50 million. They have no idea that millions of people are invested around the nation in small quantities to make this whole publicly traded company available. The public schools have once again failed us in teaching the children about basic economic structure, basic capitalism. It's sickening. We've waited 50 years in my lifetime just for the Great Society to come around. Well, we've waited 150 years for the public schools to educate everybody because, you know, the educated public is going to do us so much better.
Well, they actually have. They have met their goals.
Yeah.
They have.
Thank
They were
you.
started to be a socialist promoting entity, and that's exactly what they have become.
Well, literally, they tell you one of the reasons you have to send your kids to school is for socialization. There's a little bit of
I
intolerance
should
there.
have taken them at their word. So one of the things I had to point out, because these millennials, they read the Washington Post article for buzzwords, and then they say to their friends, Amazon didn't pay any federal taxes. Well, that's suggesting that the publicly traded company Amazon did not compensate the feds for the payroll taxes of 647,500 employees. I dare any of you to hire over 500,000 people and don't pay the feds.
Challenge accepted.
See, simply won't happen if it does one job. And so also just the income tax alone, and I just averaged this out, $7 billion per year just through personal income tax because Jeff Bezos employed them. This is the amazing. So, but the youth of today, they argue that the corporations aren't paying their fair share. Okay, when the corporations are paying all of the fair share.
Well, why is leftism the ideology of youth? Probably two reasons. One, it's infantile. It is all about sound bites and reducing very complex things down to ridiculously non-complex sort of
Just
trite platitudes.
Yes.
Not paying their fair share. What does that even mean? Doesn't necessarily mean anything. And two, it is sort of where you would arrive when you first start thinking about these issues. Well, why is it that this guy has a lot and some other people don't have very much? Well, could it be that he's just cheated them all, right? That seems to be like the simplest sort of conclusion you could come to.
Well, let me say this. 2 months ago, I went to my class 40-year reunion. Okay, now you know about my age, right? Several of my classmates had already retired as teachers. Now, I've got several years left before I get to cash in, but the teachers have a set system. And yes, it is socialism. Why would it benefit them to educate the next generation of voters just what kind of scam they have going?
Oh.
They're not motivated to explain it, to truly educate the children.
No.
They're not.
No, my parents were both teachers, and they always voted my mother's paycheck.
Yeah.
Because she worked for the public school.
Yeah,
So they
that's
always voted, even when it was shooting themselves in the foot because they didn't get it.
Mhm.
But the thing was, they always voted directly her paycheck because that was the biggest bulk of the money.
Okay.
And so they didn't really care what happened to everybody else in the whole process.
Both of my parents worked in public education, and they just had a greater moral constitution. Just they voted.
He called out your folks.
They
Told
voted
them.
conservative.
I called out my folks.
Well, that's partially true. I think my dad. I was busy in 2008. They voted for Obama, but my dad did something very brave and stunning. He said, "I'm no good at voting. I voted for Carter and I voted for Obama, so I'm going to turn in my voter registration card and not vote again because I'm clearly not very responsible voting."
Yeah.
But I did. I got them to vote for Trump. So
I quit betting on football for the same reason.
Yeah. No, it's a real problem. It used to be the state of Virginia was considered a conservative state. And then for many of the last several decades, it was a purple state, a swing state. It is now a solidly leftist state. And I'll tll you why. Because the federal government has grown so huge. The D.C. area is now overwhelmingly the population base of Virginia. And you know what's the highest income city in America per person?
let me guess. One that doesn't make anything.
Is D.C.
Oh.
And what is their product? Government.
Political influence.
They have fattened and enriched themselves in the D.C. area on our backs. And you know what? We stood by and did nothing. And I'll say this, the Republican Party let it happen.
Well, we watched those hearings and those bureaucrats, those State Department bureaucrats going on, a lot of those people that were testifying are making a couple $100,000. They're making more than our congressmen and senators, and they're idiots.
Yeah.
I mean,
arrogant idiots.
Yes, I mean it's just absolutely asinine to think that there's something legitimate about the whole thing.
Typically, your idiots are arrogant. It's the whole Dunning-Kruger thing, which you should Google.
If you realize that we on the right side are plebes operating in a lifetime spectrum, whereas those on the left are operating in the 1,000-year spectrum. So we all know that socialism starts with rationing, and they know that rationing needs to be monitored because according to consumerism. So you'll notice there's really an attack here in this Amazon piece against consumerism. It's not just simply they don't pay their fair share of taxes. That's the veiled attack on consumerism.
Oh, right.
Because watch here where Senator Michael N. Deniers, a Democrat from Queens, says it's time for a national dialogue about the perils of these types of corporate subsidies, referring to the consensual agreement between employer and employee to get paid in stock.
I can't stand this. I hear this talking point all the time, and it's like you slap someone in the face of the reality when you tell a leftist, this isn't the way you think it is, and I think they realize it. It really is a wave of cognitive dissonance. So they keep saying that these tax cuts cost the federal government money. And I'm like, that's a lot like me saying, it's costing me money, Nick Goodwin, that I'm not taking your wallet out of your pocket. Because all of that money could belong to me. And after all, it's costing me not to steal your stuff from you.
Well, it does cost us, just so we get square on this, when taxation is not uniform. And I beg you to argue with me that taxation is somehow uniform.
It's completely uniform.
Okay, so to finish this off.
But the thing is that it does cost the rest of us because we do end up footing a bigger bill, and oftentimes it works against our interests because we have to compete against somebody who's gotten a big tax break that we are not getting.
And this is the problem. Oldham and I are self-employed guys. For a long time, I had to go out and buy my own health insurance for myself, my family, out of my after-tax income. Whereas the guy working for the company getting it as a benefit, he was not paying taxes on his health insurance. And eventually, they tried to correct it. They did half measure. I get back half of what I pay in health insurance. They didn't start taxing the other guy what I was paying taxes on. Instead, why?
You're lucky
because they want to stay in office. That's why. So they said, okay, we'll give you half. So Oldham and I have to take our after-tax dollars to buy our health insurance. Meanwhile, the guy working down at the union factory doesn't pay any taxes on his health insurance.
Well, because he had a better Democratic representative, his union boss, Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah. I think the point I'm trying to make,
yes, what is your point?
Right on top of my head.
Tom has points this week.
All right.
Matthew Gardner, this progressive guy, says that damning Amazon, says, by all indications, Amazon appears to be using the tax breaks that Congress has made available. Oh my gosh, they're not using either, just being legal corporate entities, but this Matthew. So, again, they're not, when they argue about Amazon is not paying their fair share, this is an argument against basic private property ownership through basically consumption. Because, and I'm done with this, Gardner says that most of the tax breaks used by profitable businesses to reduce or eliminate their tax burdens were instituted at the behest of deep-pocketed and well-connected corporate lobbyists. And get this, in a political system that runs on private money, wow, okay, you gotta wonder what other types there are. But to finish the system here, is sentence, in a political system that runs on private money, it's always going to be hard to vote against the folks who have the money. He said, companies haven't been shy about pouring millions of dollars to prop up a system that benefits them, as though Amazon delivering to your door by drone doesn't benefit you. Yeah. And the 500,000 employees they hire.
Yeah, millennials, that's how you get your daily avocado.
And you know what, Matthew? The whole point is
Matthew
that
Gardner.
people in 1912 and 13, when they were talking about instituting the national income tax, warned that the income tax would be used, although it was started only for the top 1%.
Yep.
It was, and then it was a very small amount of tax. But you had Ford workers who were making $25 a week in gold. Think about that, what that adds up to today.
Wow.
You know, a $20 gold piece and a $5 gold piece were paid no tax. That's that's roughly $3,500 a week without tax that their workers were making at the time. Mm-hmm. And the warning was that eventually this is going to be used against you and they're going to get out of it, and that's exactly what happened.
Yep.
And it didn't take long. It only took a few years.
David Oldham, David D'Ambroso with your host, Tom E. McKay. Did you hear about how Trump spent his Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I read about that actually in the mainstream
He
media.
was
Over in Afghanistan.
No.
Golfing with lobbyists.
That was right-wing news. I heard on the good left-wing media, the only media that matters, that he was golfing.
Yes.
Oh, is that
And what else was he doing? He's golfing.
Tweeting, golfing, and more, she said.
Golfing, and more. That's what I read.
Jessica G.K. Wong, a political reporter for NewsWeek.
Yeah.
Is that what happened? I never even heard about that one.
She was she was covering the Trump administration, and she's trilingual. I am too. I speak fluent French in 3 different languages. But Trump was headed to Afghanistan to surprise U.S. troops on Thanksgiving, but she had to delete her tweet about him Thanksgiving, tweeting, golfing, and more, because she actually wrote that before the story had occurred.
I don't know why. So she could go golfing and tweeting.
There's
more.
wasn't there? Was
The
that
in more gives
Bill
it away.
Was that Bill Murray or Steve Martin that did that in one of their movies where they predicted the weather before it happened? They were
I'm
completely backwards.
But I love it. Donald Trump Jr. said from a tweet, I think, it wasn't an honest mistake, which Jessica Wong tried to say. You tried to dunk on Trump and ended up dunking on yourself because you couldn't resist. Notice how there's never been a story that broke in Trump's favor and had to be corrected the other way. There aren't mistakes. They're very consistent patterns.
Yes, and the good news is she now has plenty of time for golfing, tweeting, and more.
Remember when the federal government shut down? There was a gal from the frontier that talked about the upcoming missed payments. Well, that's funny. How are they up and coming? They're super missed. Oh my gosh. Also, did you hear about Creepy Joe? This was a good one.
What do you do now?
I couldn't
The
get
fingers?
The fingers was a good one.
And there's pictures, and are they doctored or what?
Okay, no. He
The
goes.
finger sucker.
He literally goes down on her finger. Okay. He didn't ask for consent or anything. Right down on what would have been her middle finger if she only had 3 fingers. But you wore the jacket. Okay.
All right, you're outdoing me.
The thing is, So, but the thing, here's what I think. I think they said, I think they have a thing where they make them do stuff. You know, the people on the left, they force them around. They showed Jimmy Carter the aliens that really run the place. His hair went white in a week. But anyway, so they ran the place. They told Richard Nixon he has to resign, and they've been running it ever since. And so what I think happened was they said, Joe, here's what we're going to do, and Joe really doesn't want to. And he knows the only way to get out of doing what they tell him is they're like, well, I know, I'll do anything to throw the fight. This is like a fighter throwing the fight.
I'm just going to smell everybody's hair. They'll have to
Smell the hair,
No, that's
stalk the children, lick the fingers, fingers in the air.
Joe, do like Jamie Farr, wear a dress.
That didn't work. That didn't work for Jamie
Well,
Farr either.
but Jamie
He'll end
didn't
up
stop.
winning. He'll end up winning.
Keep trying. Keep sucking them fingers.
They'll say
It'll work.
it's very progressive.
Yeah,
But-
Klinger ended up actually having
But
to take over radar.
I wasn't even going to include that mild porn of him sucking on his wife's finger because I just really wanted to.
Was that his wife?
At least it was.
At least it was his wife. It wasn't some 12-year-old.
Maybe he's proving that, maybe he is a guy in the up and up. He's like, this is what I do with my wife in public. I really mean nothing by the whole fondling of the hair and sniffing strangers' hair. But that's just me.
I wish he would have said to his wife, "You want to wrestle?" So, but from powderedwigsociety.com, this is where I got this quote. The former vice president
Tom's
spoke
website.
Google it.
at Tom E. McKay on Twitter. Hey, he said words that I gotta say. I live in the deep end, so I know when someone swims by. I cannot believe what this guy said. According to a video, WITN Channel 22 in Delaware, Aquatic Center. Biden said that he described allowing children to rub his blonde leg hair.
Yes.
While it
I
was
watched the
wet.
video, folks. I can
Okay.
attest.
Quote, this is the guy they say is Trump's political rival. Okay.
There's more innuendo to that. He is surrounded by black kids, and the implication
I
is
didn't want
that
to say it.
they were enthralled with his different colored hair.
I'm never shocked by a sexual innuendo. I'm always shocked when someone mentions roaches. I got quote from Biden, Trump's supposed political rival. Quote: I've got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun, Biden said, and the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight. Then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap, he said, and I've loved kids jumping on my lap.
Oh, God.
I tell you what, the men are now all men. The guys I work with down here, they're all guys at the time. They're all good men.
What?
Vote for me, Biden.
What?
20 whatever.
That is the most meandering
Okay,
I
but I
saw
can
it.
get
It was horrible.
I can get every sexual reference in there because I'm a freak. But I'm wondering, I learned about roaches?
It's
What's that
incoherent.
mean?
What
What
does
the
it
hell
mean?
does it mean?
I have no idea because
Roaches?
It's,
When did he say this? In what context?
This would have been June 26, 2017 at Joseph R. Biden Jr. Aquatic Center, dedication in Delaware. WITN Channel 22. Aren't you glad I had
watch the video.
This makes
So
no
watch
sense.
the video. He is. It is. I didn't see another colored child. I mean, a different colored child than Negroid.
Yeah, I didn't.
And I mean, what am I
He
going to
didn't
say?
say that.
Can't use science.
The point is that everyone I saw in the
there were a bunch of black
frame
kids.
were a bunch of black kids.
They were all a bunch of black kids at the swimming pool.
So the racial thing is, how can you deny that that's part of the thing?
Perhaps
thing.
Joe Biden
It was,
is.
and
Okay.
and it doesn't need to mean anything.
Any fake dimension?
Here's the test. What would happen if Trump had said those things?
Oh,
Okay.
it was all over it.
Now the reason for that, and this is something I wanted to bring up tonight,
Yeah.
is they keep trying to make this analogy to Watergate. Back in the good old days when the journalists were what? The journalists were anti-establishment. But they can't make that connection with Trump. Why? Because the journalists are what? Establishment.
That's right.
That's why they can't make that same adjustment. They cannot. They're not going to get the moral claim of superiority from the public because they're establishment. They're not going against anything. They're pushing and indoctrinating a party line. Back when they were arguing against Nixon, they were anti-establishment, and the public was like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So today's journalists are. I was amazed. Dylan Goforth retweeted a thing from, I think his name was Jeff Dart, said, F you, America. I mean, Dylan Goforth is 100% anti-American, retweeting "screw you, you gun-loving Americans" from some parliamentarian-loving English Brit. It's ridiculous. Man, we got our own breed of anti-American supposed journalists when all they are establishment Fs.
Well, the hippies, you know, the counterculture had a counterculture. They were the boomers, and then they got elected. They became the establishment. They revolted against the establishment. They won.
That's correct.
And now they are the establishment.
That's correct.
And they're the people, they're the older establishment. And the generation that came after them are even further leftists.
Right, so we got some more international news. Once again, Tom here with 3D Politics. All three Daves tonight. This comes from World News, Reuters. Dozens of indoctrinated young people gathered in Bangkok for a climate strike in solidarity with other morons around the world, chanting "No more coal, no more oil, keep the carbon in the soil." But Greta could not make it. Of course, that was my rendition of their headline. Students stage a global strike to pressure a UN climate summit. This is November 28th.
Yeah, but wait a minute. You
2019.
say this is a global strike in Thailand.
Lisbon, Sydney, Australia.
Oh, it's okay.
This is in
Okay.
Lisbon.
That must be global if it's
No,
Australia.
Lisbon, Portugal, and
Portugal student movement. That's correct. The
Okay.
Portugal student movement expected
They're all
thousands.
burning carbon over internet networks to make it an international constant.
Okay, were you at the Broken Arrow picketing that was going on? Because it was global, right? We should have
Serious.
seen it. No global. I don't think it's global.
I missed
Well,
it.
yeah. Question me, but not myself.
Okay, yes.
You're reading the wrong news.
Clearly. Portugal's student movement still expected thousands to join marches on Friday, building on the famous campaigners the Greta campaigner, imminent arrival. She was going to be there in Portugal to
Greta
mobilize ahead of the United Nations Climate Summit in Madrid. From December 2nd to the 13th, they're going to have a climate orgy.
So proud of our president for pulling out of that.
Oh,
tree.
yeah.
Very
And
sports.
Greta was going to be there. As I wish she'd have been here, but the movement has to carry on without her. We've got to send our message and pressure politicians ahead of the climate summit that Mariana Luca, 14, told Reuters in Lisbon. So
14-year-old.
14-year-old
There
is
you go.
where they're getting their news. Now, I want to know, is Mariana Luca 14? Is she really a 14-year-old that's pushing climate change legislation, or is she really an undercover cop looking for child predators?
I believe children are our future. Teach them well and lead them
I believe that if Mariana Luca 14,
That's her surname. That's a popular European
I'm just
surname.
saying,
Right? 14.
a 14-year-old on the internet in an international campaign is more likely an undercover cop than a 14-year-old. I'm just saying by the numbers. I'm just saying by the probability.
That's what I kind of think about when you see all these these Nazi groups, these scary groups. It's like, okay, so whatever number they claim membership, half are actually members. The other half are FBI agents.
Yeah.
They're like all FBI agents trying to entrap each other.
Some are FBI agents, some are NSA, some are
Right.
DEA.
We
some
have
are,
a third of our
ATF on there.
the government
They're all
resources.
attacked.
Like, I'm not even kidding. It's like they're on there, and it's like they're gonna find out that
There
they're
was a
all
recent-
just like
there was a
catfishing each
recent-
other.
There was a recent deal where I think we may have even talked about it here, where they arrested themselves. They had set up
Inspector Clouseau.
the one law enforcement agency was buying and the other one was selling, and they tried to arrest each other.
Beautiful.
No, they successfully arrested the guy.
Successfully
And they
arrested
didn't.
each
The guy
other.
didn't explain it. He was like, "Oh, you really were a cop."
After the dust,
Okay.
the dust settled and Bobby Bates came running in with his taser.
I don't know. I feel a whole
Because he
lot
thought it was a
safer.
taser.
I don't know about you.
I love how they think that CO2 is a poison when that's what carbonates my drink, man.
Oh, no.
Wait, isn't
Without
it what
it, trees
caused-
would die. They're trying to kill trees.
Killing
Yeah.
trees. It's amazing.
CO2 is the
They're trying to
lifeblood
suffocate
of
trees.
trees.
Do they still
Suffocate
teach earth
them.
science?
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's very basic.
It's amazing. But these other protests, besides London, Mumbai, Tel Aviv, Vienna, Frankfurt, Bangkok, they chanted, you know how impressive that is. No more coal, no more oil, keep carbon in the soil.
I'm convinced. Let's do it.
And staged a drop-dead flash mob. We should do one of those ourselves one time. We should do a show where we do a drop-dead.
Like a starvation one to show the dangers of socialism.
Oh, that's a good idea. We should come here and not
I'm hungry.
eat. We shouldn't eat for like 2 hours. Not even eat for 2 whole hours.
We don't do that in America.
Amazing. So anyway, again, the protest, they are all in on this climate change routine. I mean, they are 100% sold.
And if you had to look any further to know that facts don't matter in politics, especially on the left, you just have to look at climate control claims. The climate alarmists said that we were going to end the world in the 1960s. They said by the 1970s, we'd all be gone. In the 1970s, they said LA and New York. And this is the consensus of scientists. These are your betters and the clergy of scientism. They're way smarter than you. They have letters in front and behind their names. And they're wrong. Every single prediction. LA, New York, underwater by 1992. A consensus of scientists declared it. Not so. Al Gore, the world, we're going to destroy nations by the early 2000s. Didn't happen in the 1990s. Makes this claim. And of course now, the latest claim from AOC and others is we've got 12 years. So guess what?
This is the second round.
It won't even matter in 13 years when we're all here and LA isn't underwater. It won't even matter.
Well, this was the funny thing, was because they're just declaring we've got another 12 years, and Obama went out and spent what, $3 million on a beachfront house.
Yes, excellent point.
In the Hamptons, yes.
So if he believes, right, in this climate change and the rising waters, and he doesn't understand that trees require CO2 to grow, and then they produce oxygen, you have bigger trees, and they consume more CO2.
To your longer historical point, though, I mean, there have been so many failed predictions of end times catastrophe. We can average the numbers of years that they predict we have left. We can literally run an average on how many years, and it's about 10 to 12. If you look at, and this host here we did a whole show on fatalism contagion, and the average prediction is 10 to 12 years. It's all over. When the fatalists start screaming, you always have about 10 to 12 years. They're always their claim.
There's been a departure from science and truth in society, and a lot of the science we do now is just not real science. What do I mean by that? I mean, you learned about it in elementary school probably. The scientific method. What is it? Right? You have a hypothesis, you test it, and other people can recreate what you have done. And if they can't recreate what you've done, then it's not science. It's not empirical.
And I've got an update on that, because they called us, those of us who still believe in the biblical account of creation, that we're the science deniers. Right? We've been called that for about a century. Last week, the American Medical Association put out a position paper that says that if somebody comes to you as a physician and says, I think I'm not actually a guy, even though they've got all the biology, I really think I'm supposed to be a girl. They're saying in this paper last week that it should be a policy and should become a law that no physician can try to talk them out of what they believe.
Yeah,
now, who is the science deniers? The American Medical Association just joined the science deniers.
How many biological sexes are there? If you said infinite, that is not science. You are denying science.
Right.
But the point is, we've gotten away from it. And they say this post-truth society. I think some of the far leftists that are lamenting the Trump era, they're right, but for the wrong reasons. They're saying we're in a post-truth society. And, of course, they're pointing at, well, how can anyone believe Trump ever? How can anyone be that stupid? When really, they are the ones peddling the fake news. They have to put these retractions on page 26 on its front page. And just like Trump Jr. said, well, it always goes one way. And they're always jumping the gun and wrong about things that hurt the president, never jumping the gun being wrong things that benefit him or conservatives. Right. But we've not done science, and even in the scientific community. This whole climate change thing. It is not an empirical model if it doesn't have predictability. If your model is accurate, if it's right, if it's empirical, if it can be reproduced, you can do this great thing called make an accurate prediction. I can say when water reaches 212 degrees at this atmosphere, it's going to do what? It boils. What happens if I'm always wrong? and my number is always wrong and I can never get it right. Would you trust me? No, but we do this with this new generation of fake science, and we do it with a lot of things. Evolution is non-empirical. You can't recreate it. This whole climate change thing is non-empirical. And we have other fields of science going as non-science science, and it's infected all of society.
Well, you've got that. It runs the gamut. But the real thing is that people want to believe in something. They don't have a solid religious background to believe in, and this takes the place of it. They have all sorts of causes and things and evangelism to do and the whole thing. And we see that whether it's with vaccines, where there has never been, did you know this, a true placebo-based study done on any vaccine that they're getting, and somehow they've all passed.
So does that pass the scientific method? Is that empiricism?
Well, not the highest form of scientific data. Double-blind controlled studies are the highest form of scientific.
What they did though, when they did that, but what they did was they used a placebo, and the basis wasn't saline. It was all the other junk minus the organism from the vaccine. So you get all the adjuvants, you get the aluminum, the mercury, the formaldehyde,
the sweetest of the
MSG,
transition
and all the other stuff.
And just as many of this group got autism as that group.
Exactly, and that's what they did. But then they also,
I like being good at math. Thank you.
They also didn't look at it long enough. And what we saw with the MMR study that came out was part of the Vax movie was that they just changed the numbers. They just changed the parameters by which they were going to look at things, so that it skewed the actual numbers that they found, because those numbers weren't comfortable.
Yeah, that's right. You know, anybody can argue science all day long because science deals in things that are not necessarily certain. The canon or the standard of science is called logic. And I don't have to be a rocket scientist to tell the rocket scientist that his soldering iron is unplugged. What are you, a rocket scientist? No, I'm a logistician. And if A can only be A, it cannot also be non-A in the same relationship and in the same way at the same time. So when we talk about these issues, we're really talking about a rationale of science. It's not just arguing the science. That is, climate change, they talk about the speed of climate change. Speed requires, according to logic, an absolute frame of reference. We don't know the absolute frame of reference of the entire life cycle of the Earth.
Because they're very confident in their assumptions. And if they're sufficiently confident, that basically trumps any kind of belief in any kind of religion.
Well, if I disagree, that blows their consensus.
So now...
Well, that's why they have to do away with it.
So no longer is logic the standard in our society in public discourse. It is political agenda is more important to us than truth, is what's happening.
Well, because that's the fount of power and
it's all
money.
about the power.
It's power and money.
Easier. It's easy power. It's addictive. I think it's like these guys, in the gym or whatever, that like to do steroids, and they know all of the side effects. I mean, it'll destroy your organs, it'll shrink your testicles, all kinds of stuff. But it's so easy. You just get huge.
Yeah, we're at a place now. Remember, it only took 10 years for the Germany of 1930 to become the Germany of 1940. And those who tried to stand in the way, they were laughed at. They were scorned. There weren't enough people willing to say, this is dangerous. When truth is ignored for the sake of political operatives.
We don't have enough conservatives. We know that people with a conservative personality type that vote conservative, on average, have far more empathy.
Well, I disagree.
And they're far more polite. Well, that's actually empirical.
Well, no, I disagree. We don't have enough conservatives, because I say we don't have enough constitutionalists. Because remember, the fight is law and order versus lawlessness, tyranny versus liberty, and that's the real fight. This whole conservative.
You might be surprised to know that there's a tremendous overlap between what is defined as a conservative and a constitutionalist.
Well, often, but the problem is that if that were the case, then the conservatives would be joining me in fighting fighting for rights, and they're not.
Well, how many progressives are on your side? Versus
Well, they're not either. But my point is,
So which do you see
they're
more of?
falling into the. I see nobody wanting to truly stand up for other people's rights. Not the way we should be.
Zero other people on the planet?
I'm speaking hyperbolic.
Here
but the
we
point
go.
is,
You guys break it up.
that when they should be fighting for other people's rights.
I have a simple point. I don't want to
they-
get into other things.
one more
there
point,
have
we're
got
gonna
to
move
be handfuls of people, anyways. Obviously,
Gross.
the conservative type. But my only point was that the empathy required to give rights to other people at an equal preference to your own, and to see that their rights are not infringed, requires empathy.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of personality type that Dr. Jonathan Haidt unveiled, a leftist, that conservatives tend to have at a much higher rate than people that are progressives.
Sure.
And of course, you can argue semantics all day long. What is a conservative? Is it a single-dimensional line? Is it 2 dimensions? Are there 17 dimensions? Who is really the truest of the true Scotsman? You get into all that.
Yep.
But I think we really know what we mean when we say people that have more conservative predilections than progressive predilections.
Yeah, well,
Dave D'Ambroso, David Oldham, and David Van with your hosts Tom E. McKay right here on 3D Politics. I think that's a good point, Dave. I don't think we can calculate accurately how many of each, according to people would be fighting with me, because the amount of fight in somebody doesn't really calculate. There's a lot of people who are conservative that won't fight. People.
Well, that was the second thing that I didn't quite get to
Fight.
on the point. What Haidt also found is that people with the conservative personality type, whatever it is, and this is real stuff, Cambridge Analytica used it to identify people at a 99% rate that were conservatives before they ever cast a single ballot for a conservative candidate. So we know there is a personality constellation that will reveal your political predilections. So the people with the conservative predilection are also more polite. And what do polite people do? They don't say, Mr. Gruppenführer, you are mistaken. They say, okay, all right.
Yes.
They kind of go along with it.
Right.
So our people typically do not tear off their clothes and shake their genitalia at cameras and burn things when they don't get their way. One side does, and they tend to get their way. I don't know if you've seen it.
They are reaction shamers. Those are those people who purposely rip off their shirt and go topless and then say, "Aha, you had a reaction." This is a trivia question. Who said this? This is a new topic. This is about giving people, including some of the most reprehensible people on earth, the biggest platform in history to reach a third of the planet. Freedom of speech is not freedom of reach. Who said it?
It's a Borat.
it would be
Correct.
Borat.
Because I gave you
That's
that article.
correct. Sacha Baron Cohen's keynote address to the Anti-Defamation League's 2019 Never Is Now Summit
Yeah, they do.
on
they're the
anti-Semitism.
worst.
Take it away.
They are doing the greatest disservice to Jews, to the nation of Israel,
Who is?
to logic,
Oh,
to the Constitution of the United States. The Anti-Defamation League, which ostensibly they're supposed to be a pro-Jewish lobbyist group against racism or anti-Semitic views, they do the worst service. They create more anti-Semitism.
They do more defaming than anyone else.
They do more defaming and I mean, they are like one of the worst organizations ever. Please.
His whole speech was basically defamation of the right and of the Constitution of the United States.
And I see this all the time. I know real Nazis. I know real communists. And gosh, everything from the speech is like classic Nazi talking point.
Well,
Everything they ever use to throw at Jews collectively is from a very small set of people that really do hate liberty. They hate the Constitution. They typically hate other Jews in the nation of Israel, and it's used to paint with a broad brush an entire group of people. And I mean, the ADL has got to be one of the worst civil rights organizations to ever exist.
He spent most of his time defaming another Jew, Mark Zuckerberg.
Right.
And while Zuckerberg deserves plenty of criticism, it was interesting the angle at which Cohen took to to criticize Zuckerberg. He was basically making out that Zuckerberg was right-wing, and that he was too much in favor of free speech because you actually need censorship. In fact, just
ADL attacks Larry David too, and Jerry Seinfeld.
The quote that Oldham is referencing here: Zuckerberg, according to Cohen, claimed that the new limits on what's posted on social media would be to pull back on free expression. Cohen says that's utter nonsense. The First Amendment says that Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech. However, this does not apply to private businesses like Facebook. We're not asking these companies to determine the boundaries of free speech across society. We just want them to be responsible on their platforms. This is a plea to public opinion. This is a populism plea.
Well, and then he goes on and he ends up saying we expect them to reform themselves and to hire as many moderators as is necessary.
It only seems fair, he says, to say to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, your product is defective. You are obliged to fix it, no matter how much it costs and no matter how many moderators you need to employ. So again, he wants to control the means of production by controlling how many moderators and employees they have. He doesn't care about the costs. He wants to pull that as well.
Yeah.
And also, he will be the one that decides what is defective.
So this is perfect, perfect socialist plan. You control everything. You don't
But
care
it's
about
fair.
costs or efficiency. And you just make it happen at all costs. And 12 million people starved to death, so be it.
And he wants censorship. He absolutely wants censorship.
Yeah.
And what were his movies all about? Was about that. We're
my God.
We're about
He
freedom of
abused-
expression
he
and
abused the freedom.
attacking censorship.
Yeah.
He literally, it was almost like porn. He went outside the realm to purposely abuse and offend.
Sasha Baron Cohen and
being
Borat.
shielded by the First Amendment.
By the
protection
First
we all
Amendment, he
have.
did things that would make people extremely uncomfortable. Now, of course, none of us are calling, I understand, to say that he didn't have the right to do that, right?
Absolutely.
He absolutely
Right.
had the right to do that in his films.
Just like Penthouse has the right to print. I'm just saying, it's like they're shielded. That immoral behavior is shielded under that First
He
Amendment.
literally gets, I think, Ron Paul in a hotel room, and you'll have to see the scene.
I don't
but
think it was Ron Paul.
It was Ron Paul.
Was it?
Was it
And,
Shorty,
and he
Shorty,
it's like coming on to Ron Paul. I think he strips down the Sacha Baron Cohen guy in the film Borat, and I mean it's just extreme. But all kinds of things like this,
Yeah.
where he's really pushing the boundaries.
My concern is really two organizations, Anti-Defamation League and Southern Poverty Law Center. They both claim to be about protecting minority classes, especially Jews, blacks, and stuff. But they are some of the worst at defamation of others. They're the ones that have silenced Alex Jones, InfoWars. Remember, they're not
Who is
allowed.
married to a Jew with Jewish children?
Okay.
It doesn't matter to them.
But
It's never said anything
Yeah,
anti-Semitic, ever.
My problem with this is, Google, Facebook, they all use these far wacko bunch that accuse everybody else of defaming.
And
when
why
they are the ones
is
that
it? Because it is impolite to defame someone.
Sure.
So conservatives typically don't do it.
Right.
But who doesn't have scruples against defaming someone groundlessly? And then who gets their agenda implemented?
Mm-hmm.
What is also offensive is hypocrisy, especially to Americans. And for a guy like Sacha Baron Cohen to talk about boundaries and responsible behavior is hypocritical. He really it's just be like Howard Stern saying, "Oh, don't bring that up or use that language."
Which he,
Exactly.
Bite me.
Cohen pushes the barrier of free speech likely all the way beyond its literal legal limits into harming other people.
And go for it, but don't then turn around and be hypocritical. 3D Politics with Tom McKay. Tom McKay, your host. I got all three Davids: David Van, David Oldham, David D'Ambroso. Candidate filing begins Monday.
Yeah.
Candidate filing begins December 2 for Oklahoma presidential primary. And tell us about Zoltan.
Yeah,
Zoltan.
All right, we had.
I like the name right off the bat.
Yeah, right away we had 9 filings. filings today.
9 filings right here.
Yeah, 8.
Tulsi Gabbard, Amy Klobuchar, and this is in, they had to file in Oklahoma to run in Oklahoma. Tulsi Gabbard, Amy Klobuchar, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Andrew Yang, and Deval Patrick.
That's amazing. So they all came down here to the Capitol to file?
No, they hired people to do it.
And
I think Kamala Harris sent her hair, which is the best part of it.
did Biden have to sniff it first?
Are you sure it's not a weave?
Well, I don't know. So it looks good on camera. Andrew Yang sent his ying, and Pete Buttigieg.
But are you sure?
Yeah.
Because remember, it's Wang's for Yang, so you could be.
I'm just
He
saying.
said it.
I don't know.
That's
was
David at constitutionalgrounds.com.
Oh my gosh.
What did Pete send, Tommy McKay?
Pete Buttigieg, yeah, he had to back all the way there from South Bend. The
Okay.
thing is, Zoltan, wasn't that a movie from the 50s about a thing that came down, stuck a deal in the
He's
back
a
of
wizard.
Zoltan G. Istvan. He's a Republican, and he's going to compete with
So he claims
Trump
to be,
in the primary.
Yes.
Okay.
How
I
about
looked
that?
it up. Now, he's a guy that's been on National Geographic TV for a
Oh.
while. So he's a meaty guy. He's a Columbia School of Journalism graduate, right?
Can't trust him.
Yeah, evidently has a lot of money. But it looks like what he really wants to be is the next L. Ron Hubbard. Because he's got this humanity
Ship captain?
thing going on. No, but he's got...
Really?
Yes, you got to
Does
take
he have a
look at-
spaceship yet?
yeah, that's the good one. But
Where are the
listen,
issues?
this is all about promoting Zoltan. That's
Okay.
all it is. You know, and he's got a bunch of gobbledygook. Hey, at least the Republicans have their own Marianne Williamson.
Isn't it time? Isn't it time that someone's promoted Zoltan?
I want to see a debate.
awesome.
I will put on the
Yeah.
debate.
Yes.
Marianne and Zoltan.
That's a high orb level energy debate.
I love
Oh, come to Tulsa. We will put it on. A special promotion, special production of 3D Politics Live.
Mystic Dark Force
Yes,
versus
right.
Mystic Dark Force.
Yes.
Battle of the Sexes.
Orb energy on fleck.
His stuff, it's gobbledygook. If you can't sleep tonight, just pull up his website. You still won't be able to sleep. Your eyes will glaze over. But yeah, he was the 4th one in today, and there were a total of 9. Now we got 2 more days of filing. Obviously, Trump's going to send his people in.
So explain this
Biden-
filing. This is only presidential filing, or what
Right.
kind of filing? And when's the window?
It's the first 3 days, weekdays in December.
Okay.
Now, I'll tell you, Greg Hill and his wife, Susan, told me 8 years ago now. I ran Santorum's 2012 campaign. I hope you've forgiven me.
You're gonna have to tell us who
I
Greg
was a
Hill
Ron
is.
Paul guy then.
But not for the
anyway,
sweater.
so we were just sitting around waiting for the end of the district convention and picking our 3 candidates in 2012 to go to the RNC, right?
Right.
And killing time, and Susan says, you know, Santorum came within a whisker of not even having an Oklahoma campaign. I said, what happened?
They didn't run his
He
stuff
says,
down.
nobody knew.
Right.
And so it was the last day, and Greg Hill said, he contacted me, he says, hey, today's the last day. You want me to go down and file for you? I'll file for you. They said, yes, please do. And Santorum went on to win the Oklahoma primary.
Saved a campaign.
Yes, and you know, and Greg and Susan, I'm sorry, I waited 8 years. You said don't tell anybody, but I gotta give you your
Had an
due.
8-year NDA.
Well, I found out today that Hill is he running for CD5? He's running for Congress, or no? Is that a
No,
different
no,
Hill?
different. Yeah, that was Brian Hill. You're talking
Okay.
about, yeah.
That turns out to be a common name.
Right.
I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah. So anyway,
Well, there's a takeaway from that. Call your favorite candidate's campaign and make sure that if they
Yes.
haven't already
Absolutely.
filled everything out, that they get down and do that, because it costs what, $5,000 or something
it
like
does.
that?
Now they say if you get 1,000 voter signatures in each of the 5 congressional districts, you can opt out of it. That's how they make it constitutional. That you don't have to pay to be a candidate.
Oh, okay. So you got a day and a half to get.
Yeah, when I showed
Get
up to
5,000
pay my
signatures.
$750 for my state Senate filing, I was like, boy, that's a lot of money. And I was informed at that moment, like, well, that you chose the alternative method.
Mhm.
to registering. And I said, what do you mean the alternative? It's the only method I'm aware of. They're like, oh, you could have just gotten, X number of signatures, like 500, 600, something like that,
Right.
650.
And
I mean, is it proportional? How does it work at the state level?
Yeah, we'll have to look it up. That's, on the state. But, so here's the thing. I started looking at what's going on this primary coming up. Now, it'll be March 3rd. We've always called it Super Tuesday. I'm now calling it Mega Tuesday, not M-A-G-A. M-E-G-A, like the mega.
Oh, MAGA, Make America Great Again.
Yeah,
No, that would be MACA.
Yeah.
Oh.
Make America constitutional.
Okay, there you go. Well, anyway, but since the last primary, we've had a couple of states join us now. Used to be the southern states. This started back in 84. We were a caucus state in Oklahoma.
Right.
And the Southern Democrats decided that, if we're going to get a conservative Democrat candidate, we're going to have to set them up. So all these southern states started what was called Super Tuesday. In 88, it didn't work. Dukakis still ended up getting the nomination. But in 92, it got us Bill Clinton on the Democrat side. So they felt like it worked. Now, it's remained, and it is the 5th calendar date on the primary season. Right now. There's the 4 carve-out states. But here's what's happening this time.
You mean like they're set? They're carved out
Right,
because
those
they're
early
set in
ones.
order.
Iowa's always going to be first. They just get to be first. All right?
I hate it.
And
I
then
tried.
you got
I wanted to
New
make
Hampshire,
Oklahoma first.
You got Nevada, but get this. Number 3 was supposed to be South Carolina. You're not going to see a South Carolina. Fact is, you're not even going to see a New Hampshire or an Iowa Republican.
What's going on?
Republican, because what was happening is you had guys like Bill Weld decided he was going to run. And they were going to live off the land and get all the free media from those early states where it's dirt cheap to run. And so several of the states said, you know what? We're not even going to do a presidential preference primary or caucus. We'll just, whoever wins the national convention will be our candidate. And so they're opting not to have. But what it did was it killed Bill Weld, it killed some of the other guys who were running on the Republican side. And so you go straight into Mega Tuesday, and guess who added to those southern states now? California
has added this
biggest. Texas, they're both added to it. Now we have 14 states on that, other than the 4 carve-out, which really are nothing for
You almost on that one weekend can win.
Yes.
Win everything.
Yes, you could, because keep in
On
mind,
that one
California, now California will not be winner take all like they have been. I tell you why, because the rules, at least in the RNC, is you have to stay proportional
Up to a certain date.
for that first month.
Right.
If you're going to be a March primary, you have to stay proportional. However, there's a carve-out. If you get more than 50%, then you get them all.
Right.
Okay, so Trump should get them all early on.
Right.
Whereas if it was contested, like in 16, you had Cruz and Trump and all the rest of the guys, nobody was going to get any of those early winner-take-alls.
It's too bad because it doesn't look like Zoltan's going to carry California. So
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
So
Zoltan's a perfect California candidate.
That's my update on. Now we almost lost our Super
But he's from
Tuesday.
Mill Valley.
And-
Mill Valley is bold.
Yeah, we
With a
almost
name like
lost our
Zoltan,
Super
though,
Tuesday.
you gotta give
Yeah.
the guy some motor.
But anyway, now it's going to cost the state of Oklahoma, and here's the point I'm baiting Oldham here.
Yeah, I was waiting for him to moan about this.
It costs the state of Oklahoma. Now, 8 years ago, they said $1.2 million. Or actually said, what's his name?
George Wyland?
No, the guy who
Describe
runs the state, Paul Zuriak,
Oh.
our state election board
Right.
director, secretary. He said in going into 16 it was going to cost about $1.2 million, $1.2 million to put on that statewide election.
Right.
It's figure inflation, let's say 1.5 million.
Sure.
That's what our state is going to pay for 2 private political parties, now 3, got the libertarians, sorry guys, to decide who your presidential preference is.
Right.
Okay? Even though the actual delegates who are going to the national convention, then that convention is actually who decides the presidential
Wow.
nominee,
You know.
is done on a whole different deal.
Correct.
In that This is the state paying for private organizations to decide.
Oh, it's worse than
I've
that.
always lamented that because they're extra constitutional, but on the other side, they've sort of enshrined these parties into state law. To be fair,
Well,
that's
they
a
have,
possibility.
so
but
the
they've
state
illegally done so.
So the state constitution sort of, these parties are enshrined, and municipally,
Well,
your
not
party-
constitutionally, statutorily. in Oklahoma.
your party affiliation is decided by your municipality decides that you must register and runs these things as a mandated sort of operation. What at the DMV is that mandated that when you go that it's done at the whenever you register for your driver's
Well, that's
license.
one option.
It's one of your options.
Yeah,
okay.
and that only started, I think, in
Okay.
'88, the motor voter bill. Before that, you always went to the election.
But explain the municipal relationship with the parties. They've essentially codified these parties that are extra constitutional into our, like you said,
Well, that's
statutory
at the
law.
state level.
Yeah.
At the state level.
No, I got to hand it to
So it makes
Kentucky.
sense that the state is
Yeah.
then paying for this
Yeah.
facilitation since they
Yeah.
mandated this.
Yeah, and several more states now are switching from caucus over to primary. Colorado wanted to, Minnesota did, and
You mean the other way around?
though they went from being a caucus state to a primary state.
Okay.
Caucus is when the party has its own
Right, no, I know.
gatherings out there. Well, I got to explain
Right,
to
yeah,
people.
exactly.
So, but the primary is where you all just go down to your normal ballot place and the government runs this selection process. So here's the other thing. In Kentucky, just to play a little game, Rand Paul was running for president 4 years ago, but he also wanted to run for senator at the same time for re-election. So the state law says you can only run for one thing in a registering for primary. So he convinced the Kentucky Republican Party to switch from a primary state
To a caucus.
to a caucus state. It is actually the legislature in Kentucky.
Because the caucus
a women-
comes up after
and yeah,
Super
it was a
Tuesday.
totally separate process. So he could still file and run for U.S. Senator. But here's the point. They liked it in Kentucky, and so this time they're going to remain a caucus state.
Right.
Maine, which was very corrupt as a caucus state. Remember, Ron Paul people got screwed over that.
Oh yeah.
They went
They
to
were making up
primary.
numbers.
They went to primary. You know, so I've often said I would like to go back to a caucus state, but I'm a party activist, so, you know.
Right.
Can't be trusted.
Yeah.
Don't trust anybody under 40.
That's right.
Hat tip to MuskogeePolitico.com on this story about candidate filing. Jameson Fott gave us a story from November 29th.
Well, now he gave you the heads up it's coming. I filed, and it's on 3D Politics, but I published about 2 hours before our show tonight.
Okay.
The update on these candidates. So that's all. You can find that at Sooner Pod. Yeah, I'm going to plug my site. You're going to plug Jameson.
And Oldham is upset. He said $5,000 is too much for these people who are going to spend billions.
Yeah,
Just
you
trying to-
plugged his
Hey,
first. So I
billions.
did.
Just trying to note my sources.
Yeah,
That's all.
Jameson did a good job on what he did explaining all of it. But
Whatever
now,
that
in
was.
the next couple of days, Sooner Politics will have an update after the close of Wednesday. We'll see what the full slate is
And-
of Democrats.
Which, of course, is the state's premier news source.
And to be
That's
clear, statements of candidacy for the presidential primary should be submitted to the Secretary of Oklahoma State Election Board between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. on December 2, 3, or 4. So that is tomorrow and Wednesday is your last chance.
Yep.
And you're going to have to pay the filing fee of $5,000, or you can submit a petition and get them filled out in the West.
Hurry up.
Like if you've got 6,000 friends, get on it.
Yeah.
With Zoltan, he may be able to clone 6,000 friends. A name like that. Zoltan the Magnificent, he could go into magic.
Yeah.
Just tell
Who was
you.
the libertarian candidate for president in 2016 that had AIDS and was a felon and ran like a big cat rescue farm?
Oh,
No,
that was
that
for
was
governor. And that was in
Who's
18.
that guy?
He's in prison now.
What's his name?
He was a
Joe
libertarian.
Exotic.
Joe Exotic.
Joe Exotic. It's
he's
for
in-
you, Joe. Will you please file?
He was a
No,
libertarian.
he can't. He's in jail or in prison in
Yeah.
Florida.
Stitt, I think I have at least one favorite column. Please pardon him so he can run for president.
Except it was in Florida.
Yeah,
so the
Florida.
state has no jurisdiction.
You're running out of excuses.
These
DeSantis, please
constitutionalists.
pardon him. Someone
right.
pardon that man.
You constitutionalists ruin everything.
You know,
It's a lonely place. It's just him.
That's right.
Oklahoma game wardens are concerned over the new technology for hunters. This is by Kristen Weaver, News on 6. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Deer gun season is well underway in Oklahoma, and the use of new technology is creating new challenges when it comes to dealing with poaching. Oh, the eggs are scary. This is the first year that hunters can do almost everything online. Woohoo! Except for gutting them. So e-check in of harvested deer has been found for a while, but this is the first year hunters can access their license online.
Yeah.
So again, if the licensing isn't good enough now, if they make it easier to license this, when we do it online, again, this technology is bad.
Well, the big thing comes later in the story.
Yeah, it makes the process easier for hunters. It's causing new concerns for game wardens because some people are harvesting deer and then buying the license online after the fact, which is still illegal.
Yeah, like you don't have a right to acquire meat for your own freezer.
On your land.
On your own land.
If you've already
You gotta
shot,
pay somebody else because it's
Yeah.
the king's deer.
And you're supposed to provide a habitat for the wildlife on your land, but they're not your land. They belong to the game warden in Israel. Yeah, here's my thing on this. The game warden set this up this way, so they're hoping to get more people, make it easier to get your deer tag and, go hunting they want, because they're fully dependent upon hunting licenses to operate their department.
Yes.
Okay.
And the fees and
No,
fines.
no. As a child, I remember hunting with my dad, my grandpa, my uncles. And this happened to be in Minnesota. But sure enough, my grandpa, who's a good shot, he dropped 3 deer right in a row. Bam, bam, bam. Sent me back to the farm. Had to go tell Grandma. Grandma called my mom, called my aunt, and she went down with me. We got the licenses, the deer tags, and then I had to run back out for them to tag the deer before we gutted them and dragged them out. But that's exactly what happened, Now you can literally be on your deer stand, shoot one, it drops. You don't even get down from the tree. You get your smartphone out, you get your license, and you got your code, your number, and everything. And then you can say, hey, I lost the tag in the swamp, but here's my license. Don't look at when I got it.
It starts with tag fraud and it ends with international terrorism.
Yeah, but
There's
look,
that family.
it's just like the big corporations. If this is what the law is, I'm going to take advantage of every convenience,
Well, the thing
every
is
option.
that
take advantage of it, be legal.
Well,
That's
the
what we're
thing
gonna
is,
do.
well, if you're going to be legal, then you take it and you don't pay for the license or the tag.
He said it.
Okay, because if you this is an important point.
Yeah.
What the Department of Wildlife is doing is lawlessness. It's pure and utter illegality. It's criminality at its core.
How so, David?
Because it's unconstitutional.
Okay.
It violates our rights to feed ourselves.
I've got to remind you something. You remember, because I know you're friends with Nathan Dom as well. He had a bill that people mocked a couple years ago. The bill just simply acknowledged that the wildlife belongs to God. Because until they pass that resolution,
the state of
the state says the wildlife belongs to the state.
Which is hysterical.
You see what Nathan was up to. Senator Dom, good move. Run the bill again.
Elder Dom.
We'll support it. That's right. So, and this is why, right?
Well, the thing is that the state has taken on the position as though they are an oligarch, as though they are the majesty, the king.
Well, what's wrong with that?
In the whole corporate body in total is the king. And the thing is that is exactly the opposite of their actual position. This is why it's lawlessness. It's because they have usurped their authority. They're actually servants under each of us, but they have usurped that authority and put themselves above
aren't
us,
they better
and then
serving us
dictate.
by helping to conserve our resources?
A lot of these, to make the point though, a lot of these deer harvesters were brought up as hunters with their parents. They were so young they really couldn't have been responsible for their actions. And once you've harvested the deer, I think Hillary would say at this point, what does it matter?
What difference does it make?
Okay, but the point I want to make is if they're going to say that the deer in the woods,
Next
the
time I get the
rabbits,
quote right.
yeah,
Sorry.
okay, that all those things, if they're going to claim that they own that, what's to stop them from saying the trees on your land belong to us?
Wait, they don't already claim that?
Yeah,
The grass.
They do in large measure.
Yeah.
Or they do through zoning laws. If you get anywhere near a town, then
Yeah.
all of a sudden they declare they own your property.
Having the
They
rainwater.
take
Next
it
it'll
out.
be rainwater.
Exactly.
It'll be illegal to collect that.
So
Slippery
look,
slope.
those of you who mocked and ridiculed Nathan Dahm for what he was doing, you were the ones that were the idiots. He knew what he was doing.
Well, and this is the point: is that everything is on its head. Everything is upside down.
Yeah.
And until we get it, and conservatives rise up to put it right,
Mhm.
and recognize how it's upside down, because generally conservatives don't.
Guys, we have a big responsibility here. We typically love agencies and bureaucracy. We gotta fix that.
Well, but the point is that they go along with it, and they put up with it, when in reality it is a criminal act, and you remain a criminal in criminal complicity, and in part of the conspiracy to keep it all going.
Yep.
And so the thing is that as long as you don't acknowledge these things and do what is necessary to set it right, then you are guilty, as these criminals are in the green uniform with the badge.
Yeah.
That is an interesting thought to ponder, which I will not, and now distance myself from Oldham's thoughts as much as I can.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
Elder D'Ambroso has
we get
run
out
to
of
the
this?
far side of the phone.
And that would demonstrate the difference between a constitutionalist and a
Oh,
conservative.
no. That hurts.
And
That
by the
hurts.
way, this further explains and illustrates why you don't want to have any agency of government dependent upon citations and licenses written. It should be funded out of the general fund of the
You
government.
mean like DAs?
Yeah, exactly.
Because the entire there's now a money motive for them to go out and catch people, to sneak onto your land illegally
Perverse incentives.
and get themselves the permission to go on your land without
Google
warrant.
perverse incentives, Googlers.
In the world we live in light of, repetitive school shootings from the piece on News on 6, Game Warden said people trying to take advantage of the new system could face harsh fines.
Yes. As
wow.
Hey,
They will kill people in a school. So what if there's a harsh fine?
As Granny Clampett said, they're revenuers. That's all they
Yep.
are.
Oh,
And that's
my
literally
God.
what they are.
And jokes aside, I look at it at a case-by-case basis, and I want to have my ducks in a row, but I recently said that the ATF has committed treason. I genuinely believe that. I mean,
Yeah.
it is absolutely disgusting and unconstitutional what they have done.
Well, and murder,
Right?
and all sort, everything in between.
Entrapment, all kinds of things. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one more story to
here we
wrap
go.
up the exciting. This is apparently the story of the week right here.
That's
Hit
right.
national news. To tune us in once again, I'm glad you've joined us on Monday. 3D Politics Live right here on Facebook. I'm Tom McKay, your host. I've got David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso. All three of the most important Davids right here in the state of Oklahoma. So we all know. From this Kiefer officer received a Starbucks coffee. His coffee cup had the word pig printed on the label. So we've got the N word we can't use, we've got the F word we can't use, and of course now we won't be able to use the P word.
Well,
So I'm confused. Is that his name or what? Why
No,
is it his name?
from Glenpool, Oklahoma. This is a story from KTUL. Ethan Hutchins from Thursday.
it was from every news.
And
source around the
I'm
world.
reading from K2L TV.
Yeah.
A photo of a coffee cup is going viral after a Kiefer police officer bought some Starbucks for his dispatchers, only to see the word pig printed on the label. It was a quick trip to get coffee that left Kiefer Police Chief Johnny O'Mara with a bad taste in his mouth.
Yeah,
Look,
now
there's
the
some
police
clever
chief was-
writing there.
Yeah, but the police chief was
Can't
not
believe they
the
use the term quick jerk. Sorry.
Yeah, the police chief was not the one who went to get the coffee. It was one of his officers.
And this wasn't the police chief that
Okay.
was murdered in Florida, obviously, because he's dead.
That was Sand Springs.
His officer, talking about Police Chief Johnny O'Mara's officer,
Yes.
had stopped by the Starbucks in Glenpool to grab 5 cups of coffee. Boy, a lot of detail in your story, House.
Yeah, that's right.
Did they all say pig?
We know at least one did.
This little piggy wants creamer. This little piggy wants sugar. Sorry.
This is a children's story. Lighten up, guys.
You should be sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh. So he stopped by, got 5 cups of coffee for his dispatchers, for all his dispatchers working on Thanksgiving.
Sure.
But when the officer picked up the cups, the word pig was printed on them. After seeing the cups, O'Mara called and spoke to the Starbucks manager. He said they offered to reprint the cups if the officer brought them back, which was not the kind of apology the chief was looking for.
Oh, they would have loved to claim back all of the evidence of this, because this became a national scandal. Yeah.
Well,
they
because he then proceeded to put it all over social.
So then he
Okay.
took to social media.
That's right.
The photo took off. Tulsa's Channel 8 reached out to Starbucks, and the manager on duty referred them to the corporate message. Jory Mendez with Starbucks from the corporate said, "This is absolutely unacceptable, and we are deeply sorry to the law enforcement officer who experienced this. We have also apologized directly to him, and we are working to connect with the police chief as well as to express our remorse. The barista has been suspended pending the outcome of our investigation into this matter. This language is offensive to all law enforcement and is not representative of the deep appreciation we have for police officers who work tirelessly to keep our communities safe."
And give you tickets for license violations and things like that.
And the police, though, never call people vermin supreme, though, do they?
Wasn't in the video, you know, I kind of think of, sort of in relation to this, the Bates guy, was it, well, maybe it wasn't Bates, I feel like it was the felon that was illegally selling ammunition because he was a felon out here in Tulsa. It might have been Bates that actually shot the guy in the back. He's like saying, I can't breathe. And
No, that was the.
And the cop goes, one of them goes, expletive, F your breath. And so it's like, you know, it's free speech. You know, you can call the guy snowflake if you didn't like some cop saying F your breath or you're a thug or you're disgusting scum or whatever. I mean, it's free speech, you know. It's unfortunate. Now, they're not free from the consequences. If the Starbucks barista printed this, they're going to face quite a backlash. But, you know, I mean, constitutionally, I mean, it's speech. I mean, you know, sometimes we don't like what other people say.
Constitutionally, it is. It's stupid for business.
Oh,
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
do you want to alienate a large percentage of your business by alienating, you know, police officers and things like that? And looking at the comments and so forth, and I put up a thing last night because there's more to the story that we haven't gotten to yet, but because Chief O'Mara put out that he was offended with the pig reference and everything like that. His daughter had went to Twitter and said her father is very definitely a pig in all the definitions of the word.
Which has nothing to do with this story.
No, but when you live in glass houses.
But you can't help yourself, can you?
No,
It's directly related.
No, how is it? How is it?
Because this is the guy.
Okay, I'll
She
tell you
claims-
what.
she claims
I'm sorry,
that
you
he's not
saying what's the guy?
Okay.
This is the police chief, is it not? That made
No,
the statement.
That's
Yes.
the reason.
The term pig was made to a different officer.
But was it his officer under his?
And he
Command?
was the police chief was the one who said, "Here's what they just did to my officer."
Right. So it's a
Okay.
connection.
Okay, no,
They're
it
connected.
isn't. No, the
His
fact that
department, a reference of the officer of the department. Now it's just someone's opinion.
hey, if you act like a pig, should I call your dad a pig?
Okay, hold on.
Of course
The
not.
reason you're trying to say that the daughter's public statements
Yeah.
are not relative rational.
I'm saying
Or-
the daughter was not.
Right, she's not referencing the person who's called
She's
a
not.
bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
I see what you're saying.
That's the point, and
It
it
is
does not.
tangentially
It
connected.
does not in any way justify the insult that was directly
Nobody
made
said that it
from
was.
the barista to the officer picking up the coffee.
And that's-
In no way
That's fine, but
justifies
nobody
that.
who made
Now,
that claim.
the fact that you've got a family that's dysfunctional and some kid saying, oh, my dad's a jerk, like, when has that not happened?
Sure enough, kids.
Exactly.
Well,
but nonetheless, it does
is kind of
happen.
extreme to
Dude,
come out
what
on
you're
social
doing-
media
no. Yeah,
when
okay.
your dad's being attacked by strangers, and then say, even though he wasn't the one called Pig, it was his officer in his command. It is kind of extreme to come out and say, you're right. I mean, typically your family bands together. Like, I might criticize my family member.
Not
If some
if you-
stranger does, I
Yeah.
come to their defense. It's weird.
Yeah, I know, but how many broken families are there in this state?
Two.
It's one of the worst.
Too many.
Okay, and I'm just saying, when you have broken families, and a lot of times kids end up taking sides in divorces, and
Well, nobody should
or
be
it
shopping
could
at
be-
Starbucks anyway.
Okay,
So,
but
going back full circle.
my point is the fact that
We're all
you've
bad.
got an estranged relationship between father and daughter has nothing to do with the actions of that Starbucks
Well,
employee.
I think there's a bigger
It's
story to the
tangential.
whole thing that is getting overlooked in the whole thing.
What?
And it happens with the whole Blue Lives Matter and the thin blue line and the knee-jerk reaction just to defend cops is and mind you, I do not want to be the guy who's ragging on cops all the time. But the problem is they deserve it.
Well, you're
And
making a gross generalization here.
But here's my point: is the term "pig" is back.
Mhm.
Okay, from the '60s,
Yep.
it is back, and it is back with a vengeance.
Yes, it is.
And it's back for a reason.
Mhm.
And that's because the cops are not acting in accord with the Constitution.
That's part of
And
it.
if they were doing that, then I guarantee you
Oh God.
that we will not be having
There's
these kinds
no
of
way you can make that guarantee.
And the
we could be
demonization,
your
well,
as
the
long as we
demonization could not stand right
well,
now. it
and
perfectly
the
stands.
reason why it's out there is it gets promulgated by a media who is the PR division of the leftist Democratic Party, and it fits their agenda.
as long
That's
as there
the
are
only reason why it's
and-
allowed to be such a popular
and
discourse.
to quote J.C. Watts about the race-baiting poverty pimps that are out there who will stoke the flames of racial unrest and a division between the citizens and the cops, because there are some people whose careers are built on
Yeah.
stoking
Sure.
those flames.
Sure.
So you can't guarantee that they're going to go away because
No,
their
no, no, no.
income is dependent upon keeping that a
Well, that's
perpetual
true, but
My point is that all you have to do is start looking at the justice system and look at
Mhm.
all the people who are
Absolutely.
there
Yes.
and are having their rights violated
Yes.
by the very system that's meant to
Yes.
secure their rights.
Especially,
Now, mind you, they are all there. Every last one of them are there because of a cop
yeah, I
violating his oath of office.
I get
Okay.
that. Well, it goes back to the...
and there's no cop who's setting these cops aright and dealing with them as they need to be done by firing and arresting them for
And
violating
we've
our
sort
rights.
of addressed this before, and I mean, you bring up some valid points, but then also, my counterpoint in defense of police officers is that, they are not attorneys. They are not constitutional law
They don't
scholars.
take your oath.
They are, well,
Don't
does
take your oath.
your oath require an absolute knowledge of a myriad of scholarly topics?
The
or
Constitution is
fields?
not that difficult. It's 4 pages long.
Okay.
I mean,
it's not that
all
difficult.
Well,
It's written in cursive.
the
You know
implementation,
that?
the implementation
I
of
forgot.
it.
Yeah, it's a lot
know
harder
what?
than you think.
I had to say, I listened to Pat Campbell this morning, had a police officer on, and he says, look, you've got to differentiate between somebody making a mistake, because officers do make mistakes,
I
in
agree.
what is a malicious intent to deprive somebody of their civil rights. And you've got to separate those two, because both exist.
except it does not matter intent. There is no, ignorance is no excuse before the law.
Unless
And
you're
we have a supreme law
But at this point,
before which you cannot claim innocence, and especially not when you are a law enforcement officer. You cannot get away with it. You are doubly responsible.
Okay.
You are more responsible than somebody who
Okay.
doesn't know
I
it.
get you.
So if you're driving, Mr. Oldham, through Hulbert, and you inadvertently fail to
Slow down to 25.
No, I'm talking about, let's just pick some weird city ordinance that the average person driving through town would not know of this ordinance. Okay? Let's say you parallel parked, but instead of being less than a foot from the curb, they say now you got to be 3 inches from the curb, and you were only 7 inches from the curb. Okay? And you can say, I did not know you had that ordinance. And they say,
Well,
ignorance of the law is no excuse.
That's
Well, we're not
literally
talking-
what's your point? That happens all the time.
I'm saying
that's-
you got to apply it to everybody.
Okay.
But
of
the
the
point
state.
is, but
I
the
don't
point,
think
in
Oldham's
fact,
not
in fact,
saying
I was just reading an article from Edwin Meese who started the war on drugs, but now is decrying the over criminalization of
Right.
turning
Yes.
innocents into criminals.
Yes.
My point is that there is a spirit behind the law for which we are guilty, and there is no excuse. All the myriad stupidity of the
hundreds of
statutes,
thousands of laws that
yes,
exist. Hundreds of thousands.
is ridiculous, and of those we are naturally going to be. I've been told both ways in Tulsa that you can make a U-turn at a light and you can't. So which is it? State law says you can. You can.
Depends
but
on
then
what
the judge
day.
said you can't.
It depends
and
on what
Tulsa
day,
said
who
you
observes
can't.
it, and who has the will to prosecute you.
Exactly.
That
And that's my
determines
point.
if you
And
are going to
So
suffer
the point
punishment.
is that there is the true law of which you
And
have
there
a
is
duty
the
to know.
high
and you
level
know.
of subjectivity in which the law is executed.
Well,
I just
no,
say,
there's the true law. What I mean
and
is the spirit
can
behind
you
it.
agree with me on this? We should have one standard that applies to everybody.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. I'll stay with that.
I agree. You know,
Okay.
out of the
Including
weeds,
cops.
Yes.
out of the weeds, and back to the story of what is rational behavior with people who matter in the story. So O'Mara, the police chief, wasn't at the place when the infraction occurred,
Right.
and his officer didn't notice that the word pig had been printed on there. Is that correct?
I don't know.
Who
It
noticed
was
it?
it was discovered at some point.
Who did the noticing?
Well,
The
another
reason
story
noticing-
I heard
I-
was that the officer came and showed his chief that. That's where I.
Okay, all right. So one way or the other, the infraction, i.e., pig on the cup, which is not correct. You shouldn't call people pigs, whether they're officers or not.
It's a moral infraction,
What if she was
not a legal
big,
one.
Hey, what if she was a big fatty
Where's
and
Rosie O'Donnell?
they wrote pig on there? Okay, well, was she not
called her
a?
a pig.
Would she?
Yeah.
Would she social media this? They
Exactly
call me a
true.
pig. You guys don't care what I'm saying.
No, I
So the point is, my whole suggestion when I first heard about this was that if there was any adult in the room, this would have been handled when the cup was handed over and it said pig on it. But apparently we didn't notice with our detective eyes that we'd been called a name until we got all the way back to the office. And then instead of me, the officer, say going back and dealing with it, I had to tell Daddy. So I had to tell the police chief, look this, Starbucks called me a pig. And so now O'Mara calls the manager. And officially he says he didn't like that they printed the word. Now, what the manager said, apparently he spoke to the manager, and then the manager, he said, they're saying that the manager said, he would reprint the cups. That is actually, legalistically, a proper response. Okay?
The smart response.
Sorry you don't like what we printed on there. It says later in the story it was meant as a joke.
Did the manager know it was meant as a joke?
The officer received the cup, said the employee
Sorry.
reached. So the employee who doesn't want to have himself arrested for no reason.
That's such a stupid explanation, by the way. Sorry, it was just a joke.
It
like,
was
what?
a joke. Have you ever worked anywhere with coworkers where we joke about?
Well, I know, but in the statement, it's not. I mean, it's. I'm just. My small point is, it's kind of stupid to admit that was.
No, it was a good move by the employee to reach out to the police officer who might pull him over later and say, "Hey, man,
Okay.
I'm sure sorry I called you a pig."
No argument there. I'm just saying that element of it, he could have left. He wasn't doing himself any favors.
I can respond to several things so far, and then let's go on. One, the fact that he didn't notice. Keep in mind, when you're getting half a dozen cups, you know, they're probably in a container.
Yeah, it's not
to
my
go there.
point, it's not
You're
my
going to set it down.
understandable.
And I'm saying the reason he didn't notice it till he got back is, of course, not.
Understandable. Okay, that's not.
But then the next thing is the officer, it's not his job to make a response. You go to the head. That's why he's the chief. The official position is determined by and stated by the chief. So that's why it was the chief who took the responsibility there.
I don't have a problem with that.
And then the third thing is that manager Starbucks did exactly what management and corporate will tell you. Get the evidence. Get them to bring those
are
back.
you kidding me? I think the
And refrain.
Starbucks manager was being a smartass, saying, "Oh yeah, you have a problem. Come back. I'll put whatever you want on there."
Well,
we don't
I
know
get
what
that,
they were
but
doing.
what I'm saying is, if I'm corporate, I'm telling that manager, by God, get that evidence.
Right.
Are you
Well,
kidding
yeah,
me?
I agree.
But you should also be giving them lots of free coffee.
Yeah,
The
you bet.
story- the
Yes,
story-
and I would have said, the corporate manager, you drive down there and offer them coupons for a month of free coffee, by God.
And donuts.
Yeah,
Dunkin'
So
Donuts.
let me.
Okay, go
I'm
ahead.
trying to get to make the parallel of
Yeah.
what O'Mara would expect if there were an analogy
Yeah.
or parallel.
Yeah, this is
So let's say that some Starbucks employee has a problem, and then they call and don't get the response they want from the police chief,
Yeah.
and then they just post it on social media. Is that what the chief would want? Was what I'm saying is my attitude is that O'Mara should have been more professional instead of acting like a teenage porn revenge routine and gone ahead, and if the manager of the store doesn't give you the answer you want, why are you posting on social media like a teenager?
I'm going to
Why don't you
JoeBiden.com.
go to the Starbucks head office? Why don't you be professional and take it up the chain professionally?
I see what you're saying. I responded to a comment in the chat. Just I said, it said evidence of what? So it's evidence of the action, right? Evidence that it was written on the
That's
cup.
really going to deny it.
Right,
Yes,
that's what he's talking about.
Well, at that
Ridiculous.
point, I don't know that it was posted on social media in there. So yeah, they would have liked to have collected all those cups, quietly done it.
Well,
I guarantee you, Starbucks this is costing them in the 5 figures, maybe 6 figures already nationally, just in the corporate goodwill that you get with community.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of the analysis here.
Maybe, yeah.
This is, we get the hypocrisy card thrown at us occasionally.
Yeah.
Our side, loosely. I know there are people that are hyper-specific about some things, Oldham. But generally, the people that have our general dispositions towards things are more consistent. This is an area where sometimes we're not consistent. Yeah, you call the cop a mean name. We typically like cops, on average, way more than the left does.
Yeah.
We're guilty. We're all guilty of that. But if we're going to call someone a snowflake for getting their feelers hurt, because they heard the word that they didn't like, we're kind of going to have to go to the same place here, right? It was a word. And you can react however you want to a word.
The reason I think it's more displeasurable that the cop uses this social media platform is because the idea of doxing someone or having to display their negative actions through a social media shame campaign is because the state has the power. And all we can do is post our little videos. But the cops have the power. He doesn't need to use the people's choice of limited Facebook posts. He could have just gone behind the channels quietly like a professional instead of a teenager and just called Starbucks and handled it professionally.
He could have, but at the same time, he has the same right as any other private citizen.
Sure he does.
He does. Keep in mind, this was not a violation of statutory code.
It's fine.
This is
I sort of get-
marketplace. This is community decency, and this is calling
So,
out.
You made a good
Okay,
analogy
listen.
though. So, but you know, I think you were, if you didn't explicitly say it, you were knocking right on that door. Well, then don't be mad when the reverse happens.
Right.
And then the public, don't decry when the public is uploading that that Facebook Live video of some cop that does something. You're saying, well, you didn't see the half hour before that.
Yeah.
And he said a mean thing, and that caused him to violate his rights. I mean,
And to finalize your point right there, don't get upset when your daughter, who hates your guts, posts on there too, because it's a public forum.
That's called
you can just get ready for everybody's
I
comment.
guess that's a great point. He opened it up. If
If
you
you
didn't make a
want
public
to throw it
comment,
out there, I might comment.
Well, and
Anybody can
you know
comment.
what's really interesting is O'Mara's posts are gone. You cannot find anything about
because
this
he
anymore.
got hit with it. Well, I mean, two
I think
biblical
the backlash
points, and I
happened
think
to the police department as well.
my Wi-Fi hotspot's about to die. So 2 points here. Next
Hey,
thing
it's
is
private information, too much.
All right.
well, it's a power in our video right now.
Boom!
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
Two things. What biblically, the ultimate source of wisdom is the Bible. Objectively, factually, and I think I could prove that. But you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So you go out there and you're mad and you're redressing grievances, redressing them on social media. The chief gets hit by his daughter of grievances, redressing them against him, and then he pulled them. And the second thing is the Bible's wisdom, which I think applies to all of us, and I think conservatives will take this better than leftists. It says, take not offense.
Right.
That's our duty. When offense is thrown at us,
forgive.
don't
Let me wrap
take
up.
it and forgive.
Let me say this. Those whom you swore an oath to serve and protect, you shouldn't be defaming either. I have been defamed by cops. I think many people have. So yeah, let's just not defame anyone, okay?
It would be nice. Golden rule would solve just about everything.
Yeah,
That's
the Bible
about
too.
it. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in and once again to 3D Politics. David Van, David Oldham, and David D'Ambroso. I'm your host right here for 3D Politics. We'll see you again next week on Monday night at 7 p.m.